Today we're really pleased that we are going to have Raphael Aguiar to present his seminar. I hope no one minds that we're recording. If you do, please let us know. So just to start, so Raphael has got over a decade of experience in the field, working in Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, Middle East, so a bit everywhere in the world. He began his career in international development as a project manager for the Humanity and Inclusion Handicap International NGO. He then led humanitarian and development projects using rights-based and grassroots approaches to promote equity in health and disability through primary healthcare provision and the adoption and implementation of international convention and national policies. So then Raphael moved to the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations, where he headed the units that were focusing on knowledge and information management concerning serious crimes, human rights violations, and administrative issues. And then more recently, he worked in crisis risk management at the United Nations Resident and Humanitarian Coordination Office in Cameroon. So Raphael's got BSc in physiotherapy from Brazil, and then got an MSc with honors in social and cultural anthropology from the Catholic University in Louvain in Belgium. He also obtained his PhD in very recently, actually, congratulations still, at the Health Policy and Equity Program at your university. His research interest encompasses the design and management of global health programs and intervention, as well as the global health impact of recent patterns of urbanization, climate crisis, and accelerated human activity. His current research focuses on the urban political ecologies of One Health, right? Or single health, whatever. And the governance of antimicrobial resistance and other emerging threat to global health, including neglected parasites, with whom Raphael is working with us on a project on neglected parasite in Canada. So the floor is to you, Raphael. Welcome. So we'll let Raphael present and we'll take the questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hélène, for this introduction. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I would like to start sharing my slide. So let me see if I can do that. From start. So can you see my slide open on the screen?
Yeah, it's super. It's good.
Excellent. Thank you. Let me just minimize this window. Okay. Okay. So thanks again, Hélène, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Broadly speaking, this presentation is about the urban dimension of One Health and AMR. And specifically, this presentation is about the use of critical urban theory to identify underexposed dimensions of AMR. In our research, we use an urban lens to explore how societal relations with nature or nature-society relations, they are shaping environments and producing vulnerabilities that accelerate antimicrobial resistance. This planetary urbanization notion or approach that I included in this slide actually was used in our research as a way to indicate that in a completely urbanized society, we must consider the impact of the urban dimension in all forms of life in our planet. So for those that are not very familiar with the notion of antimicrobial resistance, antimicrobial resistance is a natural mechanism accelerated by antimicrobial use and anthropogenic activities affecting microbial organisms. In other words, antimicrobial resistance happens when medications, antimicrobials, antifungals, pesticides, they stop working. For this, research for this presentation, we will focus on a different aspect of antimicrobial resistance, which is the aspect that AMR is a mechanism deeply interconnected with these anthropogenic pressures on planetary health systems, connected to the fabric of our society, current modes of care, production and consumption, and to pathways exacerbating other global health threats such as climate change. So a bit more context. Today's presentation is based on a manuscript published recently and authored by Mary Wiktorowicz, Roger Keil, and I in the journal Social Science and Medicine. And this presentation is also an earlier version of this manuscript, is also part of my PhD dissertation. So the manuscript, the revised version of the manuscript has actually 6 sections, but obviously, rather than going through each section, I will just highlight a couple of ideas found in the manuscript that I'd like you to hear and perhaps remember from this work. So this is taken from section 2, Unsettling Traditional Urban Conceptions in Global Health. And what we do here is basically we try to call for critical urban approaches that look at how processes and forms of urbanization are shaping nature-society relations that are worsening or exacerbating inequalities and systemic risks to global health. In the introductory part of the manuscript, we try to frame a context where urbanization currently serves to accelerate production and consumption patterns globally. And then by delineating this context, we draw on political scholarship, urban political scholarship, or UPE, to argue that these generic notions of urbanizations, and I cite examples of smart cities or supercluster initiatives, they're actually obscuring inequalities because they disregard the impact of the social determinants of health. They reproduce a global history of environmental degradation, dispossession, and uneven capitalist development. So this is a bit theoretical, but it's just the beginning. It's just to ground the approach that we'll continue on this presentation. So as a reaction to urban approaches that reproduce a history of environmental degradation, dispossession, and uneven capitalism, critical urban researchers, they propose sustainable nature-societal relations as a critical urban approach. And building on these authors, contributions to urban research focused on sustainable nature-society relations, they have been organized in 2 ways. And this is crucial. The way these contributions have been organized is crucial for our research. So the first way is to organize by redressing societal relations with nature. So they look at how urbanization has been detrimental to human health, human, animal, and environmental health. Well, they look at how societal relations with nature have contributed to environmental degradation. And the second way these contributions were organized is by calling for a reorganization of urbanization by rescaling socio-ecological governance arrangements. So this is a bit abstract, but it's central to the work, because by focusing on addressing environmental degradation, urban scholars, they focused on topics that are actually relevant for One Health, such as access to clean water, food insecurity, and also housing and adequate living conditions. So in a way, they focus on both the social determinants of health and also on commons resource management, or how the commons, natural resources, water, land, forests, are being managed or privatized. And by focus on sustainable nature-society relations, these urban scholars, they focus on these issues in a productive way, So the insight here is that urban political scholarship looks at this social determinants of health or the commodification of these determinants, and also look at privatization of commons resource management to address One Health issues, such as optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems, while addressing the collective need for clean water, safe and nutritious food, taking action on climate change, and contributing to sustainable development. So the first main reason why these propositions are important is because they look at how they organize how we can approach issues from an urban dimension to address One Health threats. And the second reason these propositions are important is because by redressing societal relations with nature and rescaling socio-ecological governance arrangements, these propositions, they also inform urban political ecology approach to antimicrobial resistance. So on the left side of the figure, you can see how these propositions can be organized can be used to organize urban research that informs One Health and governance arrangements to address AMR. We will be unpacking how these contributions effectively contribute to AMR governance approaches. But before we do that, I would just like to look at how One Health and AMR can be situated in relation to urbanization processes. So we look at how the connections between urbanization, One Health, and AMR. I will pass this. So when we look at the critical urban dimension of AMR in One Health, we are focusing on the urban political ecology dimension of AMR. And this focus can range from calls to integrate the political economy and structural causes underlying One Health, health equity, environmental justice, and the interdependency of One Health threats at multiple scales, topographies, and constellation of agencies. So a UPE lens would allow us to look at the structural factors, the market pressure, and international competition, influencing pathogen exposure and antimicrobial misuse in low, middle, and health income countries. We can also look at, and this is the second bullet point, how AMR is influenced by pandemics, climate change, and biodiversity degradation. I mean, you can also look at the evidence linking AMR to inadequate healthcare and deficient urban infrastructure. So on the right side, what I wanted to show here is a table showing connections between climate change and AMR. But despite this causal relationships, there are gaps in identifying these connections between climate change and AMR. And even though there are gaps, policymakers are already trying to address the interdependencies of AMR. So when we look at this critical urban dimension of AMR in One Health, we are basically trying to understand the socio-political ecological dimension of AMR. And if there is one key idea that I would like for you to take as a takeaway from the previous slide, is that a general theoretical framework that we use in our research is that under conditions of climate change and biodiversity degradation, AMR is not only determined by biophysical processes, but also constructed out of a particular set of social and spatial relations that are mediated through the landscape. So with the notion that AMR and One Health are integrated, can be explored through an urban dimension from a critical perspective, how can an urban political ecology lens inform governance approaches addressing AMR? So we're looking back at these propositions to understand how UPE as a critical urban theory can inform governance arrangements. And we will start with the proposition redressing societal relations with nature. And we will quickly look at the contribution to research, rethinking human and more than human relationalities. And here, we draw on contributions to research considering human and more than human relationalities with soil, water, and air, and on research promoting non-hierarchical agreements between human and non-human actors. So building on these contributions to urban research can be a way to inform AMR research or governance approaches that, well, research that criticizes AMR arrangements for focusing on biomedical security logic of surveillance, technical and market integration, and behavioral change, and also support research that focus on the social determinants of AMR risks and on research that supports the integration of climate change and environmental degradation measures to address AMR risks. So on the bottom right of the slide, I include examples of how this contribution can inform governance arrangements. And as part of a second research, we are looking at the One Health Global Action Plan to address AMR, specifically at water and sanitation programs, antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance awareness raising activities, and One Health surveillance systems. So we look at these actions to withdraw on UPE research to look at these actions and guide a critical analysis of these human and more than human relations in environments with higher AMR risks. So that would look a bit like looking at entanglements between water and human and land to inform governance arrangements and in terms of governance arrangements that focused on environmental stewardship and environmental justice considerations. So in terms of measures, we could include environmental stewardship and environmental justice considerations within awareness-raising activities. Or we could look at the equitable distribution of environmental and health benefits when implementing One Health surveillance systems. So these are examples of how a non-hierarchical approach to our relation with commons can guide a critical analysis of governance arrangements. The second example that I would like to bring is set of contributions to human research that are focused on situated and extended urbanizations. So the term extended urbanization is used to describe urbanization forms and processes that shape nature-society relations and are located at the peripheries of metropolitan cores, including a full range of non-city geographies. What is interesting about extended urbanization is that similar forms and processes of extended urbanization, they have been cited in global health research as AMR hotspots. So this could include informal settlements, wastewater treatment infrastructures, agricultural and aquacultural sites and operations. So if we draw on UPE research to consider AMR hotspots as extended urbanization forms, we would broaden the analysis of these hotspots to consider also structural and local socioeconomic factors that produce the vulnerabilities accelerating AMR, namely market pressures, international competition, and hierarchies of global economies from the global north. So consider, as an example, consider marine aquaculture operations say, a shrimp farm or a fish, salmon, as an extended urbanization that is also influenced by a biomedical framing that have drawn attention to AMU failures. So rather than contextualize this AMR hotspots as subject to market pressure and international competition, governance approaches to AMR rather focus on optimizing antimicrobial use on these operations. So I think that there is research on, for example, aquaculture in Bangladesh, showing that market pressures also play a big role on antimicrobial misuse and the pressure to produce more at a lower cost in a small space. Another contribution to urban research that is relevant for AMR governance is under the proposition rescaling of socio-ecological governance arrangements to AMR. So we are looking now at addressing the externalities of AMR. Here we can draw on urban research that actually theorizes governance in the context of neoliberal organization of resources and practices of sustainability. So an interesting concept that can be used to inform One Health AMR governance arrangements approaches is the concept of an ecoscalar fix, in which governance arrangements, they are rescaled by integrating an ecological scale or dimension. So here we can think of a concept of ecoscalar fix. For example, integrating an ecological stewardship into governance arrangements so that we can situate AMR risks in relation to, for example, to measures addressing environmental degradation or climate change. So this is a way to, by situating risks away from this biomedical framing, we're also considering the environmental injustices and the environmental concerns that affect not only antimicrobial resistance, but also other global health threats. I give as an example, well, I'll show you examples later on the slide. So through a UPE lens, we can actually inform the integration of different socio-ecological pathways to sustainable nature-society relations in governance arrangements. So I would like to talk now about how UPE scholarship can inform a shared governance model, knowing that a socio-ecological approach to nature-society relations can provide different pathways to the governance of antimicrobial resistance, as well as other environmental and socioeconomic considerations. What I included here is a table from a different paper that is currently under review. And this paper is an analysis of governance arrangements through an urban political ecology lens. So what you see highlighted in blue are examples found in the literature of findings or opportunities to link or integrate AMR governance arrangements to broader concerns, global health threats, or socioeconomic measures. So, for example, the first light blue box under findings and broader concerns highlight the fact that we can link AMR governance to broader concerns such as the global health security agenda. And in terms of, so this has actually been done, it is described in the literature. And then in terms of opportunities, what has been cited are opportunities to link governance approaches to the SDGs or universal healthcare plans. So UPE allow us to make these interconnections to broader concerns because UPE is concerned with governance, as we mentioned, giving an example of the ecoscalar fix, but also UPE can allow us to look at the connection between AMR governance measures and global responses to other global health threats, such as infectious disease, food safety issues, and environmental health hazards. Another example is WASH programs that AMR governance arrangements could also be integrated within water, sanitation, and hygiene programs. So I guess the added value here of a UPE-informed analysis or an approach, a UPE approach to governance arrangements, is that it looks at both the social and ecological dimensions from a critical perspective and allow us to theorize the integration of these different dimensions. I think it's 12:30, so I'm going to stop now. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Raphael. I'm going to open the floor to questions. I think we had a comment from Olivier on the chat. I don't know if you would like to show yourself and put your mic on and ask your question live. Vas-y, Olivier, mets ton micro.
Yes. It was a comments, like you said, as you said, it was a comments, but I was trying to like appreciate the way the presentation was linking the issue of AMR governance with inequities in urban settings in terms of settlements, and the way we can see how people, because we are talking about global health here at the same time, and we see the way people are unequally affected by the issue because of the way the place they live in urban settings. So this is maybe an opportunity for us to start thinking on how to rethink our urbanization and the territory occupation in urban settings. So that was what was passing through my mind when I saw the link, the bridges that were put in place during the debate, during the presentation.
Thank you so much, Olivier, for this contribution. That is absolutely right. I think an urban dimension or this UPE lens on AMR governance arrangements would indeed illuminate the difference exposure to AMR risks according to following these socioeconomic inequalities in terms of basically where we live, the neighborhoods, the type of urbanization processes that we are subjected to also, and the pressures. So you are right that an urban dimension could actually offer this contribution to the development of action plans addressing AMR. Another example is how an equitable approach to the implementation of surveillance systems would look at how these surveillance systems are actually contributing to the sharing equity gains across target groups. I can tell you about surveillance systems that disregard actually the social determinants of health and are not considering the differential pathogen exposure. But not only that, this urban political ecology approach would also look at how this relates to nature and how in a more sort of just way and how this relationship with nature can also connect measures addressing AMR to broader concerns that will ultimately affect AMR, such as climate change, environmental degradation, and poverty, which is one of the points that you raised.
You have any other people who would like to ask a question or have a comment? Antoine?
Yes, yes. Do you hear me? Yeah, I think so. I thank you really much for your presentation. Really nice to see about the end of your thesis. I'm really glad to hear that you have finally finished. We are in the same boat right now. About I really like you kind of try to be really practical. I think in your presentation, I will kind of shift you in more the theoretical side. I know you like it too. So you talk about the governance arrangement, and I was kind of wondering, like, what kind of arrangement we talk about the object of governance, like what to govern, but how do we kind of really kind of arrange the governance in this way? And I'm bringing you to the like my theoretical framework is more Bruno Latour and Michel Caron, so you will see that in my question. But like, how do you involve the non-human being into this kind of governance process? Because they have no voice in our kind of legal framework. They don't have rights because they cannot involve themselves in the parliament and blah blah blah. So how do we kind of manage to rearrange the governance in order to make their voice hearable into the governance settings? Like we can say about species, things, and landscape, because if we want to bring the ecology object into the governance, at one point we have to kind of make room for their voice. So what's the kind of way to do it?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Antoine, for the for the comments and for your question. So it's a really good question because let me first say what we did and where we stopped. So what we did is we look at existing governance arrangements. So basically we looked at governance arrangements that are part of the Global Action Plan to address AMR, which was developed by the UN system and has been sort of different iterations and versions. And then we look at the One Health concept and how it has evolved. Also to now we can assume that includes broader questions about the collective use of water and land in a more, I would say, just way. So when we talk about identifying governance pathways, we are referring specifically to the governance mode that the action plan is trying to inform, developed by the UN. But your question is about how do we consider a governance arrangement when non-human actors such as water, lands, and forests are engaged in a non-hierarchical relationship, right? So that would be that is an excellent question, but that unfortunately it would be hard to include that within this framework of global action plans and AMR governance arrangements. However, when we talk about a critical governance approach, and when we were talking about that first contribution to rethink human relations and how this can inform better governance approaches, the challenge now is to move further and forward to start thinking about how this entanglement, how this relationship between water or there is a case, I think it's a mountain in New Zealand that has been granted personality, sort of a legal status. And it would be interesting to actually look at how this relationship between, what the mountain is offering or what water offers in terms of resources and what it needs, in terms of equitable or just relations with humans, and see how that fares in a governance arrangement addressing not just AMR, but also other One Health threats. The idea here is to connect the governance of antimicrobial resistance to the governance of other environmental issues. And by doing that, we would hope that we would look at more just relations between these non-human actors. So it's half an answer, but that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Antoine and Raphael. We had Sébastien who also had a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Raphael, for this talk. Was brilliant. I mean, continuing historically, because between two fields of research are really impressive, and I like them. I appreciate them. My question relates, like you answered a bit in your last answer, but it relates to more the practical implication, because in the emails when you invite, in the invitation, you said you will also talk about the practical implication for policymakers. And I was wondering, like, when you speak of governing arrangements, if you look mainly at the UN Action Plan, then it means you are mostly at the policy design stage, or and we are not really still, like, we're not in implementation yet. So the means, do you consider the means of implementation and what the member states do concretely in your analysis? Because then, you know, it's the SDG were made to make everything connected, and the UN likes to do that. But at the end of the day, nation state and maybe regional and local collectivities on the ground, they don't have all the means to integrate everything, so they have to prioritize. So my question would be about based on these research, what happens then on the ground and concretely on the reduction of use of AMR? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian, for being here and for asking this very relevant question. So, in fact, the Global Action Plan to address AMR was, so it's an action plan, and it was designed by or released, published by the UN in 2015. And since then, countries, they have been trying to institutionalize this plan. And a range of different actors, from international NGOs to UN agencies, through technical cooperation and sort of ministry, sort of government agencies, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have been supporting countries to design their own action plans based on the UN action plan. But as a guidance, the UN action plan is extremely focused on a biomedical approach to AMR. And by doing that, it unfortunately disregards how the social determinants of health impact antimicrobial resistance, and also this differential pathogen exposure and the market pressures and all these sort of issues that are outside the One Health approach. So what we did, that table I showed you, we actually looked at published manuscripts discussing the implementation of governance approaches. And by looking at the discussion of these governance approaches, we could draw on the comments made by these actors on what could be done to improve these action plans. So ideas to link to SDGs, universal healthcare, to other disease programs, health and development, approaches to health and development, they all come from actors in the field. And most of these papers, they were published by folks in the Global South. So now where most of the urbanization is taking place, most of this expansion of urbanization forms and processes is taking place, which is in the Global South, which is also generating pressures on planetary health systems. These folks, they're actually calling for broader approaches to address antimicrobial resistance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Are there any other questions, comments for Raphael? I'm one of those biomedical folks, so I'm a little bit lost. For me, it's very hard to follow all of that stuff, but I'm very practical. I'm very down to earth. Also, all the theory stuff, I'm not. I don't get much. What's really practical to me is in terms of urbanization. Urbanization often comes with urban farming. Urban farming is absolutely not regulated and doesn't fall within much of surveillance of any kind of anything. Similarly, what the animals that are controlled the most by human in cities are companion animals, for which again, they fall in the crack and there's zero surveillance. So again, I'm a very biomedical person, so but to my knowledge, there's not much going on in terms of governance or anything that have to do with these animals, which in turn would impact the spread of antimicrobial resistant infectious agent to their owner, or their own owner can infect them, right? MRSA often comes out of the hospital and ends up in cats and dogs because of humans. So I don't know if you can help me see or know if you've looked at these things or if it's something that would be feasible with your framework.
Thank you, Hélène. I think it's a super relevant question because so it is true that companion animals are a bit they deserve more attention from in terms of surveillance and how to sort of say optimize the use of antimicrobials and regulate and oversee this. But also it is true that companion animals are also part of an ecosystem and ecology, and they could perhaps, so what my first approach would be to understand perhaps how measures to look at animal health could be integrated within broader measures, say animal welfare or even animal health, public health, I don't know. So I think in practice, perhaps surveillance systems looking at companion animals, the information from the surveillance systems could be integrated with information about sort of epidemiological information, but also, where they are located and basically surveillance data, and could be analyzed from a more critical perspective, looking at, structural determinants. I'm not also an expert in animal health or veterinary, but I can imagine that an approach integrating animal health could be beneficial not just to animals, but to humans and the environment.
Well, I think Antoine could talk to us about integrating that between human and animals for a very long time, and it's not that trivial. Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, yeah. Briefly.
Okay, it was not a comment, it was a question, but for sure we could talk about that for a long time, and I will be pleasure for that. About my question, because I really like the idea of integrating wildlife management to all this perspective of One Health. I totally agree with you, and the definition you gave to me was really beautiful, like about the whole habitat that changing, and we should kind of have that monitored, blah blah. And I was wondering, because like in US and Canada, in the more administrative part, because there's two levels. There's like more the policymaking law, and also the administrative part that have approach, protocol, and put things into operation. It's kind of two levels of action in which we can have some leverage. And in US and Canada, they are really in wildlife management to the ecosystemic approach to environment. And is there kind of maybe a better bridge, like from like the ecosystemic approach to health and ecosystemic approach to environment, like kind of to bridge those two approaches that are already implemented into our kind of administrative ministry kind of adjustment, instead of having a more international framework of One Health that we kind of try to frame in order to get ecology into it. Like there's two levels of it, and I don't have any answer about that, but it's a kind of ongoing question to me. Or should we prioritize like One Health to EcoHealth or not? Because there are two separate things that can be complementary. But to me, there's two leverage of action we can get there. Are you following my question? Do you have something about that?
No. That's a great question. So I guess because we know that One Health has been going through different formulations over time, right? It started outside the UN, and then the UN started to bring different formulations, and we are hoping that the environment plays a bigger part on it, and as a sort of as a conceptual, right, approach to these issues. We would hope that at a supranational level, this approach could foster this kind of integration that you're talking about. But yeah, I would be also interested to see some work done at a more local or administrative level on how this integration would effectively unfold. That's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, very good question. And actually, Antoine, in the Lancet One Health Commission, which hopefully will get published soon, we really tried to avoid the division between eco-health, planetary health, sustainable health, and One Health. The point is to end up with healthy, sustainable systems for the living. So we need to collaborate and not divide, and not try to say, oh, this guy does that, this does that, blah, blah, blah. And just FYI, One Health has been in existence way before it had a definition. And all, its use has been more promoted by vets because they're the one who were seeing the three components of it very easily, particularly in low and middle income countries, because you see people living in very, very close contact with the animals, and both are very much dependent on their environment. So it's way before the UN, it's just, and there are people at the UN who have been working on it way before it had a definition. So, we have to be careful about this. It's a very old concept that just now has a definition that's official, but yeah. Okay, I think unless there are other questions, we're gonna close the webinar. I want to really thank you, Raphael. I did catch a few parts. It's really interesting way of thinking. So thank you for that, and well done. It's great, and well done on your paper as well that got published. So yeah, so maybe just
Thank you
well
so
done
much.
and
No, I really appreciate, and yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to continue this conversation with you, with the others, on how to what is next now in terms of redesigning governance approaches, critical governance approaches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you everyone, and we'll see you hopefully at the next webinar. We're not sure what yet, right, Nancy? But we'll please look forward for the next webinar that Nancy will be organizing. And I want to thank her as well for all the organization of that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.